Today I'm going to show you how I add weight to my underweight freight cars. Coming right up. I'm Roy Smith. Thanks for joining me. You're watching another episode in my continuing series of videos about upgrading your freight cars. Right now you're looking at just a few of the freight cars I am working on. These are some of the cars that my friend Robert Browning sent to me. Why might you want to upgrade your freight cars? Very simply, to make them run better and to make them look more realistic. In this series of videos, I show you how I am upgrading my freight cars. In my previous video in this series, I shared your responses to an important question, and that question was, do you prefer your freight cars to be underweight or overweight? And I discussed the advantages and disadvantages of each option. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can go back to it by clicking on a link to it in the description to this video down below. Older cars and even newer cars right out of the box often tend to be underweight. For many in the hobby, that's fine. But I prefer my cars to be slightly overweight. I feel that adding weight to them reduces the likelihood of derailments. It reduces the bouncy or jerky movements of the cars, and it helps create the illusion that the cars are massive and heavy, just like real freight cars. Underweight and overweight are relative terms based on recommended NMRA practices. I will put a link to the NMRA website down below where you can learn about NMRA car weight practices and formulas. I model in N-scale, so on the website I've circled what the NMRA recommends for N-scale freight cars, and that is they should weigh 1/2 ounce plus 0.15 ounces for each inch of car length. We will come back to this table in a moment. You can use just about anything that is small but heavy to add weight to your freight cars. Some people even like to use pennies, which are cheap, but I fear they are too big for most N-scale applications. Here's what I like to use. Stick-on weights like those in the upper left-hand photo. These are normally used as automobile wheel weights, but we model railroaders can use them to add weight to our freight cars. The ones I use weigh 1/4 of an ounce each. The problem is they are made of steel and I can't cut them in half when I need to, at least not by using the tools I have. I like to use BBs when I want to add a little more weight. My measurements tell me that 8 BBs weigh 1/10 of an ounce. Sometimes I use lead tape. Normally this is used to add weight to golf clubs and tennis rackets, but we can use it to add weight to our freight cars. If my calculations are correct, 6 inches of this tape weigh 1/10 of an ounce, and it's easy to cut. And I use pieces of flexible weight for derby cars, which is also easy to cut. Here I've cut off this small piece with scissors. The small piece weighs 1/4 of an ounce. By the way, I bought all of these products from Amazon.com, and except for the BBs, all of them come with stick-on tape on the back. Now here are 8 simple steps I follow when adding weight to my cars. First, I measure the car. This car is 4 inches long. Next, I determine the initial weight of the car. I place it on my scale along with its trucks and metal wheels that I plan to install. The scale tells me that the car currently weighs slightly more than 0.8 of an ounce. Now I determine how much it should weigh using one of the following 2 methods. For example, I can use the NMRA table, which you saw a moment ago. That table shows me that, for N-scale, which I model in, I need to start with 1/2 ounce and add to that 0.15 ounces for each inch of car length. As you'll recall, the car is 4 inches long. Now I do the math to find out the recommended NMRA weight for the car. And here's the math. 1/2 ounce plus 0.15 ounces times 4 equals 1.1 ounces. The car should weigh 1.1 ounces. But you don't have to do all that math because there's an easier way, and that easier way is by using the Wesley Steiner template. All you have to do is lay the car on the template like this and the template tells you that the car should weigh 1.1 ounces without having to do any complicated mathematics. You can find the Wesley Steiner template on the internet. I will put a link to it down below. Now, with the car back on the scale, I begin to add weights in an attempt to bring the total weight of the car up from its current weight of 0.8 of an ounce to at least the NMRA recommendation of 1.1 ounces, or perhaps a little more, as I would prefer it to be. I add 9 inches of lead tape and 2 pieces of derby weights. And there you have it. The total weight of the car is now 1.2 ounces. As I said, I like my cars to be slightly overweight by NMRA standards. To me, slightly overweight means 1 or 2/10 of an ounce overweight. In other words, instead of the recommended NMRA weight of 1.1 ounces, this car weighs 1.2 ounces. That's 10% above the recommended NMRA weight, and I could even go as high as 1.3 ounces. Now I attach the added weight to the floor of the car. I place the derby weights over the trucks and the lead tape in between them. You want to keep the center of gravity as low as possible in the car. That's why you put the weights on the floor of the car and not on the sides or the roof. I reassemble the car, including the Microtrains trucks and Fox Valley metal wheels. And now I put the car back on the scale just to make sure that I'm satisfied with its weight. There you have it, 1.2 ounces. Let's put the car on the layout and see how it runs. No derailments. Looks good. Obviously, it's easy to add weight to some types of cars like boxcars, but not so easy to add weight to other types of cars. For example, where do you hide the weights on a flat car, gondola, or open-top hopper? In fact, on cars like these, you may not even be able to add weight, especially when running the cars empty. If you're thinking, I'll just run my open-top freight cars with loads in them, well, yes, that will add the weight you need. But remember the principle of empties in and loads out. It wouldn't be very prototypical to run the cars continuously loaded. The cars should be empty until loaded with some kind of product or material at an industry. Tank cars are especially troublesome for many people in the hobby because they can be difficult to add weight to. I certainly don't want to drill a hole in the bottom of my tank cars to put sand in them. Luckily, both ends of my Microtrains tank cars just pop off like this, and weight can be inserted in the cars. But I've already added metal wheels to all of my Microtrains tank cars. Doing that added 1/10 of an ounce to each car, and each of them now weighs 1.2 ounces. So I may not need to add any more weight to them. We'll talk about replacing plastic wheels with metal wheels in an upcoming episode. But I am concerned because my tank cars tend to be top-heavy. That is, they tend to tip over more easily than other types of cars. So it might not hurt to add yet another 1/10 of an ounce of weight to them, perhaps using BBs. I know that making my freight cars slightly overweight means that my locomotives might have to work a little harder. But remember, I run my mainline trains with 2 diesels at the head of the trains, and if I need to, I can always add a 3rd diesel at the head, or perhaps a DPU in the middle and or at the end of the train. That's what real railroads do. I talked about running DPUs in a video way back in March of 2018. Let's watch for DPUs in this train as I run it. You will see a DPU in the middle of the train and another one at the end of the train. I will put a link to that video down below. Adding locomotives is very prototypical. I want my freight cars to look heavy, and I want my locomotives to look like they're pulling heavy trains. This adds to the sense of realism that we are trying to achieve on our layouts. Well, there you have it. That's how I add weight to my freight cars. It's not the only way to do it, but it is the way I do it. Now, in the next episode of this series about upgrading your freight cars, I will be talking about changing trucks and couplers. Be sure to watch for it. In fact, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't done it yet, so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Remember, I will put a link to the playlist containing every episode in this series down below. Also remember, there are more than 300 videos for you to watch right here on this channel. I will also put a link to my videos page down below. Well, as always, I'm Roy Smith. Thanks for joining me today. Until next time, happy railroading.